Good. Good morning, Bishop.
Good. So I'm going to bring you on, Steve. So we're going to talk about. I want to talk first of all about something that I mentioned about on Sunday morning briefly in the Word. I want to talk about why I need to be filled with the Spirit of God, and there's a text in the book of Gospel of Matthew 25, and it talks about the 10 virgins, 5 wise and 5 foolish. And it says that the five wise virgins had their lamps and oil in their lamps, and the 5 foolish virgins had their lamps but no oil. And the lamps here will would represent having, well, first of all, 10. The fact that there were 10 virgins represents the entirety of Christendom, we'll say. And the wise virgin, so all of Christendom carries the lamps or the Bible, thy words, a lamp unto my feet, a light unto thy path. All have the word. But the wise not only had the word, they also had oil in their lamps. They had the Spirit of God in their lamps. They had the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. So to say it like we used to say it, they had the Holy Ghost in their lamps.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody understands the need to have that. In fact, there's a passage in Scripture that talks about one man who had asked Jesus. He came to Jesus by night by the name of Nicodemus. He asked Jesus on one occasion, "Good master, what must I do to inherit the kingdom of God?" And Jesus said to him that you have to be filled with the Spirit. You have to be born again of water and of the Spirit. In fact, Jesus said, no one can see the Lord except they have the Spirit of God. So I want to talk for a minute about a few reasons why I need to be filled with the Holy Spirit. Number one, to be born again. There's a story in the Bible, again, about Nicodemus and asking that question. And Jesus says, you must be born again of water and of the Spirit. Jesus was telling Nicodemus that no matter what good you did on the outside, you need to have a change on the inside. And that can only happen by having a spiritual rebirth. So you must be born again. The second reason why we need to have the Spirit of God, be filled with the Spirit of God, is have the power to be witnesses. Acts 1:8 says, "But ye shall receive power after the Holy Ghost has come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses unto me in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the earth." And of course, at Jesus' ascension back into heaven, he tells his disciples, he says, now, give them the Great Commission. He says, now go ye therefore and preach the gospel to every creature, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And so the power to be witnesses is essential. And Jesus makes it clear that they would not have the power to be witnesses until they had received the Spirit of God. And the third reason why I need to be filled with the Spirit of God is to have power for holy living, power to be able to live a life that pleases God, to walk uprightly before the Lord. Matthew 16:24 says, and Jesus said unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man? What does it profit a man if he should gain the whole world and lose his soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? So it's important to know that as believers, we must give ourselves, our lives, sacrificially over to the Lord. And the power to be able to do that, the Holy Spirit gives us the power, the ability to be able to live a life that pleases God. And then the fourth reason, we hear a lot of talk about spiritual gifts, but the spiritual gifts they come with the Spirit of God. If there's no infilling of the Holy Spirit, then there can be no spiritual gifts, no spiritual gifts. We're not talking about talents or abilities, talking about spiritual gifts. 1 Corinthians 12:1. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. So the Lord wants us to know about spiritual gifts. And he goes on to say how the Gentiles who were serving false idols, dumb idols, false gods, false religions. And he says in verse 3, wherefore I give you to understand that no man speaketh by the Spirit of God, calleth Jesus accursed, that no man can say that Jesus is the Lord, but by the Holy Ghost. So he says that, first of all, I want you to know about the gifts of the Spirit. And he says, and no man can really know, or the Spirit of God, or know these gifts, or have these gifts, but by the Holy Ghost. So I must be filled with the Holy Spirit if I want to operate in spiritual gifts. And people who operate in some gifting or some talent or some abilities seemingly in church, and sometimes they can be put into appear to be religious. But if there's no filling of the Holy Spirit, then whatever we do, it is of our own selves. It is not of the Spirit of God. And then the fourth reason is the fruit of the Spirit. And I talked about that a little bit, and all the various fruit of the Spirit. The Bible says that the fruit of the Spirit in the book of Galatians, chapter number 5, Paul contrasts here the acts of the flesh, talk about sexual immorality and impurity and debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy. All these things, he says, are the fruit of the flesh, right? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, the agape love, not just a casual love between friends, but the agape love, the love of God is in the Spirit of God. Joy, and joy that surpasses understanding, the joy that is not dependent upon circumstances, but the joy of the Lord that only comes with the Spirit. It is the fruit of the Spirit. Also peace, having peace in your life, living a life that's without conflict. And most people would say that that's impossible to do, and it is, except you have the Spirit of God. And then gentleness, being a gentleman, being a having proper behavior, or a gentle woman having proper behavior, proper conduct in one's life. Meekness, and meekness is, I used this example, I said meekness is like, a lion is always a lion. A lion does not cease being a lion because he is tamed or trained. He just has his powers that could be destructive to himself and others. He has them in check, or they have been trained. Meekness does not make us any less man or less woman or less of a husband or less of a wife. Being submissive in a meek way doesn't make me less of a man. Submitting to my father or submitting to some person, spiritual leader in my life, does not make me less of a child of God. But meekness is when you have the ability to take those natural instincts or gifts or your personality, and you bring it strained, you bring it under, and that's what meekness is about. It's about coming under. Having the Spirit of God makes that doable, possible, and believable. Because, of course, people who don't know the Lord oftentimes will fight against the idea of being submissive or being meek because they see it as a weakness. All right? And then the next thing is temperance, self-control, being able to control your body, your appetite, your physical desires, your emotional desires, self-control. And then the last thing I'm going to say is we're going to turn the page here, is resurrection power. You have to have the Spirit of God in order to have resurrection power. Romans 8:11 says, if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his Spirit who lives in you. So you have to have the Spirit of God. You want to be filled with the Spirit of God so you can have the ability to do the things of God and enjoy all the blessings and the power and the benefits of being born again. All right, and I hope that you were blessed by the word on this morning. We'll take a quick break right here. We're going to come back, and we're going to continue talking this morning. Glad you're there, and we're here every Thursday morning, and glad you tuned in. If you're on Facebook Live, please share, let folk know that we're here. All right, be back in about 2 minutes. Hang in there.
Praise the Lord, everybody. This is Deacon William Hawks, also known as El Presidente, here at Gospel 88.7 FM and 100.3 FM Atlantic City, where we have gospel. And yes, we're still spreading the gospel one song at a time. We want to thank God for all of our listeners who continue to pray for us and support us. Oftentimes, I'm walking down the street and someone asks, Deacon Hawks, El Presidente, I want to help. I want to get involved. I want to do my part. And they say, how can I do that? And I say, you know something? You can log onto our website and participate in our 8 for 88.7. That's right, 8 for 88.7. That's where we ask you to get involved, and you can support us by just donating $8 a month. How do you do that? You just go to our website, www.wehavegospel.com, press the donate button, and just simply support us with $8 a month. It's that simple. Once again, just go to www.wehavegospel.com, click the donate button, and follow the instruction. There you go. It's as simple as that. And once again, we thank you from all of us here at Gospel 88.7 FM and 100.3 FM, where we have gospel and where we're spreading the gospel one song at a time. God bless you.
Do you have an event coming up and need a facility? Well, let me tell you about Atlantic County's newest banquet facility, Beacon Hall, located in the heart of Egg Harbor City, right off the White Horse Pike. Beacon Hall is a full-service banquet facility that is 5,000 square feet with an attached parking lot. Book your conferences, book signings, birthday parties, bridal showers, baby showers, weddings, repasts. No event is too big or too small. You can book your next event by calling us at 609-965-4255 or email us at bookbeaconhall@gmail.com. That's BOOKBEACONHALL@gmail.com. Try Beacon Hall, where we turn moments into cherished memories.
All right, and welcome back to Bishop John Gandy Live. Again, thank you for being there on this morning. And so I want to talk for a minute about a decision that was made by Congressman Van Drew. Now, we have disagreed with some decisions that he had made previously, including his...
You unmuted?
No, you're not. We were on now. I'm sorry, we were muted. Welcome back. Thank you, Steve, for catching that. We were muted on our live. But I want to talk about Congressman Van Drew, and we had disagreed with some of his decisions previously that he had made in support of President Trump. I think one was had to do with his vote against increasing the minimum wage. Another was his vote against the impeachment of the president. And but now I want to talk about something that he did, and I'm going to give him credit when we agree. We're going to point out if he does something that I think is good or something I think that I agree with. I'm going to point that out as well, and I'm very happy to do that today. So Van Drew offers a resolution of disapproval for the heartless SNAP rule by the USDA under the Trump administration. Congressman Van Drew announces a resolution to reverse the U.S. Department of Agriculture's rule to end food security for poor and vulnerable Americans. You know, today in the USDA, I'm reading, announced that it would finalize its rule to tighten restrictions on the eligibility of able-bodied adults without dependents. I'm going to talk about this in a historical context. It's hanging there. I'm going to give you a historical perspective on this, and I think you're going to really appreciate it. So he says that for benefits through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP. Under this rule, the administration estimates that 3.1 million people, nearly 9% of the SNAP recipients, would lose their benefits. The administration action comes despite rejections by Congress, includes such measures in the 2018 Farm Bill, as well as multiple. So anyway, so the point is, the administration has chosen to cut support of for food to persons who were able-bodied persons who may not be working. Not taking into account that in some instances jobs aren't available. Van Drew goes to point out in an article here that he says that the district that he's over is a rural district. Not a lot going on in terms of the economy, a little bit challenged economically. So many of the people who are in Van Drew's district, in our district, don't work, can't work. There is no work. They're able bodies, but they can't work. And even those who do work, I forget the percentage, but I read somewhere where there was a high percentage of people working people who work menial jobs. I mean, there's just not enough money to make it. So this decision by the president to cut off over 3 million people from getting assistance for food, it is heartless. And it's just not something that we should accept. And to Van Drew's credit, he has put forth a bill to kind of hopefully to stay that decision by the president. We'll see how we'll see where it goes. And I want to have Van Drew on and talk about that, and as well as the other things we talked about. They did say they were going to give me a call. They wanted to come on and talk about something that we had talked about before that we had taken the issue with. But I'd like to have him see him come on. I'm going to give a call to his office to remind them to give us a call. By the way, so the president with this heartless decision, you can chime in if you want to, either one of you. Mm-hmm. The president with this heartless decision to cut off people, and I'm going to give you a historical context of what this is all about. But by the way, the mayor of London said Donald Trump's divisive rhetoric gives the impression that the U.S. president cares only about white Americans. Now, I don't know if you recall some years ago, I talked about a friend, a guy I did business with, who does business with Donald Trump before he was president, and while he was president. And the gentleman basically said that, in so many words, he said that Trump's decisions and positions made sense to him. He was a Russian. He's a Russian, very heavy accented Russian. And he said it made sense to him because Trump was putting forth policies that would basically to defend against the minority nations, basically. European countries and America and Russia all coming together to defend against money. So the mayor of London's observation that it appears that Trump's decisions about when he said "Make America Great," he's really talking about make America great for white Americans, and I think that many people will probably feel that way. It is puzzling to me how anyone can say that they don't see that. I think the people who say they don't see that are people who are either a part of the cult or people who agree with his positions, and perhaps there's some racial bias with them, or there are people who simply like the policies because they benefit themselves, and they're not really familiar with, concerned with, sensitive to the plight of poor people and the plight of people who are working class, people who are just struggling. They're not sensitive to that. In fact, there are some people who blame people who are struggling. They blame them for their struggle. They blame them as if they are struggling because they don't want to work. Getting back to this decision by the president to cut these people off, historically, there was this, the effort was made to try and give the impression that people who were in need of assistance were in need of assistance because somehow they did something wrong. And I want to talk about that for a minute. So, the Trump administration proposes this rule that cuts more than 3 million people off of assistance. I'm going to come from an article that I read in the New York Times by David Super. It's an old article. It said, when President Ronald Reagan attacked anti-poverty programs, he claimed to be limiting assistance to the poorest of the poor. He insisted he was protecting the safety net for the truly needy. So President Reagan, when he made a decision to cut some food stamps and that kind of thing to the poor, he said, I'm going to cut it, but I'm doing it because I want to save the safety net. He was saying that if we keep on taking care of the poor and the way that we're doing it, it's going to cut into our ability to save the poorest of the poor. So it sounded like it was a nice thing to do. I guess, trying to make sure that there was, but the truth of the matter is two things. First of all, we don't spend enough money on the poor to break the bank. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, even the money that was saved did not go to help or to reassure or to secure the safety net. It went to give tax breaks to the rich. Now that's the theme of this whole thing throughout these last 40, 50 years. And then later, a decade later, Newt Gingrich, who was then Speaker of the House, he carried even deeper cuts. Can you close that door, Steve? Mm-hmm. Even deeper cuts. And he said the same thing. He says, he lamented, let's see, it says Newt Gingrich carried out deeper cuts, anti-poverty programs, contending he was addressing a failure of recipients of public benefits to work. Now, Newt, if you recall this, those of you who were around, Gingrich, during that era, in the I think it was the 80s or 90s, I don't know. But anyway, I remember he says that people who are receiving benefits and they're not working. Now they didn't take into account that some of them could not work because there was no work. But regardless to the reason why a person was not working, if you were not working, you didn't get benefits. Here's the flip side to that. People who went out to get work were immediately cut off. Benefits were cut off. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter whether you had a job that didn't pay enough money or whatever. So it put poor people in a squeeze. Mm-hmm. Poor and working class people in a squeeze.
I think part of the problem is one of Trump's his concepts or his statements when he was running for office was, well, I know what it's like to be poor because I had to borrow $1 million from my dad and I had to pay it back. Like when we if you look at that in true perspective, you say you don't know the plight of a working class citizen, the plight of a poor person, the plight of a person that needs assistance. Mm-hmm. You have no clue, and you don't care. Maybe, I guess, Reagan, he wanted to continue the war on drugs or the war on drug addicts and the war on poor people, and I guess Trump is doing the same thing. All right.
Yeah.
So there's a war against poor people now.
Well, not just now; it's always been. Here's what I think. I try to make this appeal, and hang in there, because I'm gonna say something else, because I don't want you to think that I'm advocating. I'm advocating for the poor, but I'm not in any way suggesting that people who are poor think they need to be poor.
Right.
Because God has got a plan for our prosperity and our good. But in the meantime, people who are poor need to be, and we have an obligation and a duty as the church, as a government, as a people who may be rich, we have an obligation according to Scripture to care for the poor. And when you begin to see policies by the government, the wealthiest nation on the earth, that intentionally cut benefits to poor people, help to poor people, and intentionally cut poor people out of being able to benefit and be from or eat food, the basic needs of life, basic necessities. And here's the deception: they're so politically adroit until they convince working class or middle class people. I'm going to say working class because there ain't no such thing as middle class too much anymore. So they convince people who are working class, who are perhaps in many cases a job away from, or a week away from, or a month away from being themselves poor, they convince them to support policies that are absolutely, and I want to talk about it from a Christian perspective, unchristian, that are absolutely unbiblical. And so there are many Christians who support the policies of this president and past in the last 20, 30, 40 years or so, and also the policies of Republicans. This has been a theme of the Republicans, which is becoming more and more a party of the super rich. And again, I'm not talking about people who are poor being poor forever, but I am making the case that there are some people who are poor for reasons not of their own doing. Some people are poor because of the way the system is designed to operate. Some people are poor because the economy is bad, or whatever the case may be. Cost of living is high. And so there's many reasons why people are poor. We're not talking about making people poor and making people dependent. If you know me, what I believe and what I teach, then you know that I am absolutely against being dependent upon the government or anyone else for your own being. Even a job, I believe that we should be seeking to understand and build wealth, have knowledge to build wealth, and have knowledge to become independent, and trust in God and be blessed by God and so forth. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes about what the Scripture says about that. But so I'm not harping on just being poor and people needing to be taken care of forever. Not talking about that. But I do know the Bible says the poor you will have with you always. And whoever they are, we are obligated as moral people, as people who supposedly are Christians. And I'm using that term in a very broad sense. I'm using it in the terms of the 10 versions, not the 5 wise, but in the 10 versions. Right. So in a very broad sense, our claim to be a Christian nation, or religious in any sense, we have an obligation to care for people who are poor. So we had Reagan and his approach to cutting benefits to the poor people, with the promise that it was going to secure the net for those who are really poor, with the supposedly because we couldn't afford to take care of those who may not be who may be able to work but unable to. That was not the case, and the money that was saved never went to the safety net. Newt Gingrich later on comes in, same theme. He wants to cut off people who are on who Reagan has said these are people who are poor, they can be on. We kick the other ones off. Newt Gingrich comes and says even the people who are on, if you're not working and you can work, you should be off as well, without regard to whether or not you were able to get a job and all that, without any respect. So they cut the people off. Who gets the benefit from the savings? The rich, in form of tax cuts and tax breaks. And then Donald Trump's policy. It brings us to where we are now. And this is why I want to give Congressman Van Drew some credit for standing up and fighting against this proposal by the president to cut off 3 million people from receiving SNAP benefits, benefits for food. These are people who are poor, people who are in some cases working poor, but they will be cut off. And the president doesn't even offer any kind of, this administration doesn't offer any kind of reasoning. It's just heartless. This is what Van Drew kind of implies, the heartless decision to do this. And we know that he just in 2017 gave a tax break to the rich. So you and gave, I don't know how many millions of dollars to farmers and other groups, and people get. So my point is, I'm really challenging people who are believers, especially those who can support this president, and even if there's some things that may be done that benefit you financially, I want to challenge your ethics. I want to challenge your humanity. I want to challenge your morals. I want to challenge, if you're a Christian, your Christianity. I want to challenge you if you are religious of any kind. Most religions would suggest that you help people who are poor. And I want to challenge you because of the policies that are immoral, and also on just the immorality of the man and how to support this kind of thing. And it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. I don't care. I don't think that it doesn't matter to me whether you're Republican or Democrat. Quite honestly, it doesn't really matter to me. But it does matter here that because I care about. Now, these are my people. I care. These are people that I minister to, people I pastor, people in our communities. We care about people. Right. This affects our people.
Right.
And for us not to be silent to it, I may be doing well, and I don't need it. But I'm just as guilty as the super rich if I am silent to it. Mm-hmm. So as a preacher, as a pastor, as a prophet of God, as a pastor or whatever, we absolutely must speak to it. And to be silent to it, we'll continue to see the kind of erosion of things that are necessary for people just to live and make it in life. And to be silent to it is to be complicit in these heartless kinds of acts. So you want to jump in before I turn the corner here and talk about it bring up some scriptural perspectives.
No, you got it.
All right. So I am advocating for the poor and the working poor and working class people. It's not because I believe that people should continue to be under. I don't want to see people continue to live under the stress of poverty or need or lack, because I believe that the Scripture lets us to know that God will provide for us and supply every need, and the Scripture also says that we don't have to live in lack. Mm-hmm. There's no need to live in lack. And but how did that happen for us? So I believe in the biblical plan for prosperity and health, whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual. I believe in the biblical plan. This is the blessing, the beauty of having the Word of God. Those of us who are Christians, it's a lamp unto our feet. Those of us who believe and follow after it, it's a light unto our pathway. Right? The government and the rich should care for the needs of the poor according to Scripture, not politics. So although we're talking about something that for some people they hear politics, but I'm talking about it from a scriptural and spiritual perspective. We have a scriptural and spiritual responsibility to care for and care about people who are poor. That means that we have to speak to policies and speak truth to power. Mm-hmm. We have to speak to those who make decisions that affect the lives of the poor, whether they eat or not. That means that we must speak to it. Matthew 6 lets us to know in verse number 24 says, "No man can serve two masters, for either you'll love one and hate the other, or hate one and love the other. You cannot serve God and mammon." You cannot serve God and riches, number one. But then the 25th verse says, "Therefore I say unto you, don't worry about your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, nor about your body, or what you will put on. It is not life more than food, and the body more than raiment. Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap nor gather nor barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more value than they? Which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature?" So we're not talking about worrying. We're not talking about panicking. We're not talking about being so absorbed in the world's concerns until we are, frustrated. No, I point them out because I want to use the Scripture to talk about why it's important that we as people of God, number one, believe, and why it's important to be the people of God, as particularly when it comes to pastors and prophets and so forth, have to speak to it and speak to those who are in authority, speak to the king and let them know. But speak to them what? The things of God. But here's the answer. Here's the true answer for all people. The answer is not in politics. The answer is not in Washington, D.C. I know that. The answer is not in the halls of government. I know that for us. But the halls of government do make decisions that impact people, even people who are not believers, or people who are believers who do not have faith, or people who are believers who have not reached a certain point who still need help, need assistance. The church is not a place where everybody doesn't need help. If that were the case, then in the early church in the book of Acts, they would not have had the issue where the deacons had to be created, because there were folk who were in need, who felt like they were not being treated fairly, and then the disciples called these 7 men who were called deacons, who were filled with the Holy Ghost, filled with the Spirit of God. Back to being filled with the Spirit of God. These 7 men who were filled with the Spirit of God, they said, "That you all make sure that people who have needs, make sure their needs are met." So the church is not a place where there are people who don't have needs. People have needs. That's just the reality. Because I know there's some people on the other side of this, on the other extreme side of this, who are Christians, who say that we should not even worry about some of these policies and whatever's going on in politics, because we have the scripture. Listen, in my church, in your church, in my house, your house, everybody's house, folk have needs, right? And we believe God, waiting on God, and we do what we can do on our part. But the need is so great until, I don't know about you, but I'm not able to do it all. Don't know about your church, but my church can't do it all. We can't do it all. We cannot support people who need support. But we do pay taxes at people who work. Some of those people pay taxes, have paid taxes, have paid into the system that's supposed to, that the government has promised would supply them with their needs, or at least help them to make
at least some support.
Some support. And to not do that is unethical and immoral. So we must speak against that, and unfair. Verse 28 in the book of Matthew says, "So why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field and how they grow, neither toil nor spin," talking to those who are believers. "And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Now if God clothe the grass of the field, today is, and tomorrow was thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore do not worry about." Don't worry, saying, "What shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For after all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you have need of these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." This is the God answer to the problem. This is the spiritual, biblical answer to the problem. It's a promise to us. Again, but not everyone has faith, or not everyone is to that place, or whatever. Not everyone is in a place where they are without need. And then there are people who are among us who are not believers and so forth. We care about the stranger as well. We are commanded to even care about the poor, even if they are strangers, non-believers. So I want to just kind of do away with the idea that some of us have, that because we are Christians or believers, that these kinds of concerns should not be ours. These are our concerns. There's nothing more important than life.
Right.
And this is a part of our light shining also. And this is a part of our our impacting the world in which we live. We are to be impacting the world. We ought to be addressing the issues. We ought to be speaking truth to power. We ought to be declaring the gospel. At the same time, teaching what I'm teaching here, teaching believers what the scripture says about our good and our well-being and our good health and our prosperity and so forth. So it's not just about being religious. It's not just about having a lamp, carrying a Bible, but not having the Spirit of God, and the manifestation of the Spirit of God and the power of God, manifestation of the gifts of God, and the manifestation of the fruit of the Spirit in our lives. So seeking first the kingdom of God reflects all of that. And then the Lord says, he says, and when that happens, then I will add all these things unto you. Now, there's a lot that the word teaches us about wealth, about prosperity. It even talks about debt and not being in debt. The only debt that Paul said, the only debt that we really have is our debt we owe folk love.
Amen.
Other than that, we should not be in debt. But many of us, Scripture also said, my people suffer for lack of knowledge. Many of us, though we are believers, we still go out and we overdo it in debt. We get ourselves into very, very unhealthy positions. Let me say this about people who are rich. Some people who are rich, they know that certain behaviors, certain habits will lead you to debt. And they are unforgiving if you have poor behavior and bad habits. And they have no pity. They just say you shouldn't do it.
Right.
You shouldn't have got yourself in trouble.
But then they lure you into it.
Well, yeah, they lure you into it with mortgages. look at the student loans. I mean,
Or subprime loans.
subprime loans, student loans, student loans. You know, student loans is a problem, and we know in our country, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's a problem here's the reason why it's a problem, because it's almost like it's like on the IRS.
Yeah. 90% of the people that get student loans can't afford to pay them back.
Can't afford to pay them back, and also you can't, even if you had trouble, you can't bankrupt yourself out of it.
Right.
You know, it's like owning the government. So there is no bankruptcy that will help bail you out. There is no bailout.
Right.
Right. And but the point is, there are people who do not give, who will blame people who are in financial trouble because they say you have made poor choices, which is often the case. People who are working and make poor choices, we get a house we can't afford, or I take that back, we get a house because we need a house. Can't afford it because it's just priced that way.
Right.
In some cases, right? Well, but we can, like cars. There's a lot of things that we do in our behavior. And my point is, seeking first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, all these things be added. Having knowledge, lacking knowledge gets us in trouble.
Right.
Having the Spirit of God that gives us the ability, the fruit of the Spirit, the ability to have self-control, not to overdo it in things, in material things, not to have appetites that are so out of control that it gets us in trouble. Now we know, I will confess, I've certainly made decisions in my life, and have done things in my life, made decisions that had that got me into trouble, and that's true of all of us.
A lot of people that are poor, that are struggling, I don't think it's that they just make poor decisions. They just don't have means. You know, don't have the means to get themselves to the next thing.
Of course, I didn't say all people who are poor.
Yeah, I know.
I just spent about 20 minutes saying that people who are poor and why they're poor.
Right.
Now I'm talking about those of us who are believers, who have the Word of God.
Right.
And when we do not seek first the kingdom of God, what's the kingdom of God? His ways.
Right.
His Word, for whatever reason, not knowing it, or rejecting it, or not having the ability, or having self-control and discipline to do it, because there's no excuse. We don't excuse or coddle
Ignorance,
people who make bad decisions and find themselves in trouble. We don't want to coddle them. We want to help them, but we don't coddle them. We want to say to you, "Here's a better way."
Right.
That's what the Word gives to us, a better way.
So check this out. So. We all know the scripture, but Isaiah 61, it says...
We don't all know the scripture, but go ahead.
All right. Well, for those who don't... actually, let me preface it by saying Rich... Or I saw yesterday how Pence was saying that Trump is a super Christian with super Christian ethics and things like that. And like we all take on this title, or people try to take on this title, but then when it comes to things like dealing with the poor or your love, like showing the love of God, having the heart of God, we say we have the Spirit of God, we say we're Christians, but then we do total opposite of what I'm about to read that the Bible says that we should be. It says, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, the opening of prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. But one of the translations says, He sent me to the poor, to go to the poor with good news. Right. Well, what's the good news? Oh, I'm going to cut off your supplies. I'm going to cut off your resources because your city's ran by Democrats and I'm a Republican. We're not going to give you any support to get the lead out of your water, so your kids continue to go to school with brain damage because they have heavy metals in their blood.
And the cruel rich are cruel, right? It goes back to what I said about the 10 virgins. Now, because you say you're a Christian, and I hate using that term, but I'm using it for these purposes of discussion. Because you say you are a Christian, you may be in the sense of being one of the 10 virgins, in the sense of being a part of the overall of Christendom.
Right.
But 5 were wise and 5 were foolish. The 5 foolish they had no oil, no Spirit of God. The wise had the Spirit of God.
Right.
If you don't have the Spirit of God, you don't have the love of God. Their interpretation of love is very different.
Right.
Agape love cannot take from the poor. Put lead in your water. People who say they're Christians, government always say they're Christians, make decisions that do damage, that hurt the poor, unethical, immoral, and all that, corruption and all that kind of thing. They do not cannot have the Spirit of God, because the fruit of the Spirit is not evident
Right.
in their lives.
Right.
So we understand that. So we have these conversations. It kind of gets a little bit challenging, and I use the term Christian a lot in a very broad context. I do know that most people who say they are Christians, are not. All right, and they're not Spirit filled.
I think that's just a testament to what this country was built on, the word Christianity, or the guise of being built on the Bible, and
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, slave masters used the Bible as a way to manipulate and as a way to that's just what this country was built on. So we're not surprised when we see, like he said, Trump being a super Christian or whatever the case may be, because when it comes down to how you govern this country, are you going back to Christian or whatever you want to call it? Are you going back to the principles of
Jim Crow Christianity?
Exactly.
They never left that.
Right. So, we can't really be surprised. It's not new that Christianity or the Bible is being manipulated to basically to keep certain people exactly where they are. But also, like you said earlier, Bishop, we can't assume that people know, and that's why that scripture, seek first the kingdom of heaven, it's double-sided, because we're seeking first the kingdom, but it's also understanding what a kingdom system looks like.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you understand what a kingdom system looks like, and you're always seeking, okay, so if I seek God first, then everything else will be added. And really, people don't know the scripture. We go to church weekly, or we may go to Bible study, but people don't really study to show themselves approved. We just, my pastor said this, that, and the third. Well, did your pastor break it down? Does your pastor know the scripture? You know what I mean? So we're living in a time of the surface. Like everything is surface, and people aren't really getting what this is, how this can really benefit your life if you follow this. You know what I mean? If you follow scripture to the T and do what he says to do, it works.
It absolutely works, and that's kind of my point. So my point is, of course, we speak truth to power. We want to address all of these injustices, and we have to, and we want to address them also. Some of them to be addressed in the halls of government.
Right.
So we don't go into the church and just talk to the church and all of that and think that it's going to solve the problem. That's not what a problem is.
Right.
All right. And as a citizen, as a taxpayer, and as a human being, you want to appeal to, like in the scripture, we have biblical example. The example in scripture is always replete with folk, Old Testament and New Testament, speaking truth to power. Who has power? Governments, people who are, and they're wicked, so many of them, but they have power. And we ought to go there and try to appeal to them on behalf of righteousness and justice and for the poor and so forth, or even also to have their minds changed. So we don't do that by just going to church and saying we're going to just wait. No, that's what they want you to do. Right. They want you to do that. So while you're sleeping, they're taking all the wealth. They're changing all the laws, changing all the programs. They're doing it while you're sleeping, and you're expecting something to happen that's not going to happen. Right? Look at where we are today compared to where we were or thought we were perhaps 8 years ago. In terms of opportunity, in terms of, the rich are getting richer.
Right.
We're almost at a point where there's a monarchy. This president is behaving.
Almost.
He's behaving that way, and it's not a monarchy. But when you talk about 2% of the people having 80% of the wealth, you're close to a monarchy. In a monarchy, the king has all of the wealth. In this case, you might have about 100 people
Yeah.
who have all of the wealth.
Kind of more like a oligarchy.
Yeah. So the point is, we have to address that. And we're not panicking. We're not fretting. I read the scripture in Matthew. We're not worrying. We're not fretting. But we do have responsibility. We are to be here on this earth right now, occupy.
Right.
The Lord said, occupy till I come. He said, I'm going to give you the power, the Spirit of God, that you'll have the ability, and also to tread on serpents and cast out demons. All of that is why the Spirit of God is necessary. And having the Spirit of God, that's not something that just happens in, which we do oftentimes. It's only in a church context. And it only happens, all the power that we have, the miraculous power that we have, supernatural power we have, never impacts anybody outside of the earshot of our
Four walls.
microphone. And I think that there's more opportunity in terms of getting the word of God out than that. Anyway, let me take a quick break right here. I went a long time, and we're going to take a break. And thank you for being there, and I pray that you're blessed. If you want to give a call in, I'm in the radio station, 609-641-8870. If you want to give a call in and have a comment, I would appreciate it. All right, back in about 2 minutes. Hang in there.
I'm Paul George of the Indiana Pacers. When I was 6, my days were spent playing basketball. When I was 6, my dream was to make it to the NBA. When I was 6, my mom had a stroke. So I want you to learn to spot a stroke fast. F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. I'm Paul George. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke
Hawks
Association. and the
Janitorial
Ad Council.
Contractors Corp. was established in 1987 by husband and wife team William and Elaine Hawks. Our motto is a great job at a fair price. The Hawks team is skillful, customer-focused, delivering quality janitorial services that meet and exceed our clients' specific needs. Hawks Janitorial Contractors Corp., proud sponsors of Gospel 88.7 FM. For more information, 609-484-0452.
The weather outside is frightful.
But the gospel is so delightful. Yes.
Check out our new website at www.wehavegospel.com.
And welcome back to Bishop John Gandy Live. Thank you for being there on this morning. I pray that you're doing well, and you and your family, your household, and that God is blessing you, and you're enjoying the blessings and the favor of God in your life. God is anyway. God is good. Life is just so wonderful.
You're right.
So wonderful. But we have a charge to keep in terms of caring for. I see some real. I've seen back, a few years back, some challenging times, and I think they're more challenging than most people know. I want to sound that alarm to the extent that I can.
Right.
That people will know. I look at people who are look at the church world. And it seems as if in the church world people are just seemingly oblivious. It is like the scripture said that the Lord's going to come in the day that you think not. With the 10 virgins when at midnight a cry was made. There's an unexpected time that things happen. Folk are just not ready. This is another kind of a little bit off topic, but kind of still in the same area. I saw where I'm not going to say that. I don't like to talk about bad news about Christians, but I think I'm going to have to probably start doing that to make certain points. But I don't do it because I don't want to sound like or appear to be badgering or beating up on some people who we already take enough beating. I take beatings. Do you know that there are people who don't like me? I mean, can you imagine such a thing?
That's crazy.
That is crazy. and I said that jokingly, but I said I was talking to someone. They said they were talking about themselves. They said, there are people who don't like me. And it's funny because I didn't even know it. I'm talking to someone, and someone said to me after they walked away. They said, "Do you know that person really don't like you at all. I said, I didn't know it. That sounds like me.
So crazy.
You know, my father used to say, I have no enemies. He took speaking of himself. He said, I have no enemies. Now, my father was a preacher. My father was a radio preacher here in the Atlantic City area. My father preached against sin. My father was, some people say he was a hard, old school preacher. I don't think it was hard at all. I think he was just telling the truth. And there's some people who just didn't, who found it to be a little strong. Of course, when you are, truth doesn't hurt you when you're not living a lie.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So anyway, but the point is, but he would say, I have no enemy. Well, he knew that not everyone, that many people had real issues with it. They could get their hands on, they would get their hands on him and silence him. But his point was, it's not about what people think of you.
Right.
You're filled with joy when you're doing the things of God and you're doing what God has called you to do. And you have the Spirit of God. You do it everything you do it in love. You do it for all the right reasons.
Right.
So you have peace. It's the Spirit of God. One of the fruit of the Spirit is peace. Peace, where you live your life without contentions, and that's what we have. Every prophet of God, every preacher of God, we are the ones who are to sound the alarm. We are the ones who are to sound loudly. Right. To speak loud about things that are wrong. And here's what people become uncomfortable with. When you speak about what's wrong and you speak about it loudly, people are annoyed by it. And of course, that makes some of us, Christians and believers or preachers, it makes us shut our mouths.
It's kind of like with Colin Kaepernick. Well, that's not the platform for it. Well, what is the platform?
What is the platform for it? So it's truth. And I'm saying this to encourage all of us believers and to encourage pastors, those of us who are called. We have to sound the alarm. We have to speak truth in season and out of season. Speaking when people want to hear it and when they don't want to hear it. When they don't want to hear it, most of the time. But the point is, when you understand the word and the value of it, you know how it blesses people's lives. Yeah. You know how truth is a corrector. It brings correction. It takes people off of the wrong course, puts them on the right course. People suffering for lack of knowledge. The word of God is knowledge. It is the word, is knowledge that changes people's lives, changes the trajectory of their lives, repositions them for the blessings and the favor of God, seeking the kingdom of God. And the Lord said, I'll take care of all of your needs. He says he'll make sure that you have no lack and no want. It doesn't mean that you're going to be rich. I am rich, not with material things, but I'm rich. I'm rich with the promises of God, the favor of God, the blessings of God, and I even got, like Paul said, I even count my trouble to be good. So when you have the Spirit of God, when you have got the Spirit of God, every day is just a blessed, wonderful day.
Right. Check this out. So, did you realize the Bible says the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead?
Yes, sir.
Of course, you said it earlier. He said it'll quicken your mortal body, right?
Right.
But it also says that it's the same Spirit that gives you the power to get wealth.
Absolutely.
It doesn't say the power, because you mentioned debt earlier.
Yes, right.
And of course, we're going into Christmas season. Everybody's out spending money that they don't have on things they don't need to give the people they don't like.
Yeah.
And but the Bible says, he says, I gave you the power to get wealth, that my covenant may be established in the earth through you.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
But he didn't say, I'll give you the power to go get debt or get in debt.
That's
and
right.
Owe a bunch of people and be a slave to them.
Well, when you get into debt, first of all, it's not wealth. When you have a lot of things and you own none of it, it's not wealth.
Right.
And most of us live. It's a money pit, and most of us live a lie. And we think because we're buying into the world's definition and standards. Who gave us this definition? The rich, who are saying borrow more. Be in debt. You've got to have this house. You've got to have this kind of car. You've got to have these things, and the scripture also says that you are a slave. The debtor is a slave. The borrower is a slave to the lender.
Yeah.
And we live that way, and that's living beneath our privilege. And that's what we have to say. Is it people want to hear it? No. People just want to live their lives and just kind of leave me alone.
Yeah, just like it's kind of like watching TV. Like
Right.
being entertained, being so focused on TV, you don't want anybody to talk, you don't want anybody to say anything, you don't want the phone to ring.
Yeah.
Well, that's how people live their lives.
Right,
Like, just let me be.
So we ought to preach the gospel in season and out of season. Right? When they want to hear it, because you don't even know. I use the example. I said that if a person is born, and they are when they're first born as an infant, if they are adopted, and they live their lives as an adopted child, and they never even know that they were adopted, it doesn't mean that they were not adopted. Mm-hmm. They're actually living, I'm going to say it this way, they're living a lie, which they don't know until someone tells them that you're adopted. Mm-hmm. So when you're living without the knowledge of knowing, I don't mean lie, I don't mean intentional lie, I don't mean in the bad context, but they're living in a falsehood. Mm-hmm. When truth comes, it opens up to them something that previously they had not known, had no concern about. Mm-hmm. What the gospel does. When truth comes, it makes people aware of something that they did not know before. It makes them know the error of their way, or the mistake, or that they're living a way that there's a better way of living. Mm-hmm. When truth comes. And unfortunately, I think that sometimes we as the church don't want to mess with people, want people to leave them alone, let them be comfortable, and leave them in that falsehood, mm-hmm. in debt, living as if they are wealthy, because they have credit and they're up to their ears in debt and mm-hmm. that kind. No, we ought to tell them what the scripture says. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we want to do, and I'm going to talk more about this as time goes on, is talk about becoming debt free and living a different kind of life, and still lacking nothing, and living in the blessings and the favor and the promises of God. So thank you very much. My time is about out. Thank you for being there. Those of you on radio, appreciate you. Thank you. Those on Facebook, thank you for being there. Steve and Kristen.
Thank you to our sponsors.
Oh, yes.
Abundant Life Worship Center. Come see me on Sunday. Come hang out with me. 32 Bishop John R. Gandy Avenue, Egg Harbor City, New Jersey. 10 a.m.
Thank you. And to WEHA at wehavegospel.com. If you want to help the station, support the station, 609-641-8870. Also to Beacon Hall at 243 St. Louis Avenue in Egg Harbor City. If you have a need for a venue for any kind of event, Beacon Hall really is the place. And also to the
Freedom City
Bike Club.
Let's go get a bike and take a ride.
Road. All right. So thank you again. God bless you. We'll see you next week.
Gospel 88.7 WEHA. It's more than music. It's ministry.
WEHA, Port Republic, Atlantic City. And now on FM Translator 100.3 W262CF, Atlantic City.
Hello, WEHA listeners. This is Lisa Diane Hall, General Sales Manager here at WEHA 88.7 and 100.3 FM, where we have gospel and we have talk. We'd like to thank you for listening and sincerely appreciate your continued support over the last 10 years. Thanks to all of you, WEHA is now a 2-time Stellar Award-winning gospel radio station. With a recording studio, it is currently seeking new Sunday morning programming and new talk shows. For more information or to arrange a WEHA studio tour, you can reach me, Lisa Diane Hall, at WEHA Studios at 609-641-8870. That's 609-641-8870. WEHA is Christ-centered, community-focused, and listener-supported.
Would you like to hear your company or church announcements or church broadcast on the airwaves of WHA? You can call our business office at 609-641-8870 for further details.
I am a Christian. Do you know what that means? Means I'm far from perfect. Simply redeemed, I was bought with a purpose, purchased by love. It's not a form of religion, it's a gift from above. I am not perfect, I have been redeemed. pledged my life, giving everything. I never knew that this was meant to be. I am not perfect, but I have been redeemed. While I was yet in my transgressions, somebody paid the price for me. I offer up my life to Him, and now I say again, I am not perfect. I have been redeemed. I am your brother. Let me show you the way. We'll walk this road together. Take it day by day. Somehow I know we'll make this journey's end. Make no mistake about it. You have been redeemed. Redeemed. While you were yet in your transgressions, somebody paid to set you free. So offer up your life to Him, accept this love, and we'll be here to walk together. For we are now redeemed, redeemed. While we were yet in our transgressions, He gave His life for you and me. So why not give our lives to Him, accept this love, and then begin to stand together hand in hand.
Come on, put your hands together tonight. Yeah, oh yeah. We just want to encourage you with this word tonight. Look at your neighbor and say, be not weary. Well doing. But know that in time it will. And if you set your eyes and know that God is working on, be not weary, well doing, but know that in time it's gonna work. And if you set your eyes and know that God is working on your behalf, well, it may not come when you want them, but you gotta hold on. For all things work together for those who love the Lord. And don't you be moved by the snares of the enemy, you gotta hold on. Even when your back's up against the wall, that's when you gotta keep on keeping on. Be not weary, well doing. Know that in time it's gonna. And if you set your eyes and know that God's working on your behalf, well, He may not come when you want Him, but you gotta hold on. For all things work together for those who love the Lord. And don't you be moved by the snares of the enemy, you gotta hold on. Yeah, when your back's up against the wall, that's when you gotta keep on keeping on. But God is not. Oh no. And it's never far away. Yeah. Everybody just clap your hands and say, oh yeah. Oh, yeah. Come on in this place and just clap your hands. Everybody just clap your hands and say, oh yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, oh, come on in. The race is not given. The swift nor strong. Victory belongs to those.
Do you have an event coming up and need a facility? Well, let me tell you about Atlantic County's newest banquet facility, Beacon Hall, located in the heart of Egg Harbor City, right off the White Horse Pike. Beacon Hall is a full-service banquet facility that is 5,000 square feet with an attached parking lot. Book your conferences, book signings, birthday parties, bridal showers, baby showers, weddings, repasts. No event is too big or too small. You can book your next event by calling us at 609-965-4255 or email us at bookbeaconhall@gmail.com. That's BOOKBEACONHALL @gmail.com. Try Beacon Hall, where we turn moments into cherished memories.
Reliance Medical Group is celebrating 35 years of providing quality health care to this community. Specializing in women's health care, pediatrics, and adult medicine, Reliance considers your family to be their family by providing multicultural physicians and bilingual staffing that understand your medical needs. Reliance is pleased to announce new specialty services, including neurology, corrective and cosmetic surgery, and bariatric weight loss. Reliance offers same-day appointments, accepts most insurance plans, and is currently seeking new patient enrollments. To schedule an appointment, you can call Reliance at 1-855-RELIANCE, or you can log on to their website at RelianceMedicalGroup.net, or download the Reliance app to find a location near you. Reliance Medical Group, where access to quality health care is a right, not a privilege.
That holds your deliverance, you feeling this? Asking me how God could save a man, raise a man. The enemy, he plays your man. So why you judging me and you bugging me? Just remember me, ain't no fear in me. You hearing me? That's right. That's right. you don't question this. Radical, acrobatical, Jesus Christ fanatical, sabbatical taker, innovator, in love with the creator. Since I was a baby, I know folk hate me, but lately don't really matter what you say. Them silly games you try and play, I represent the one who healed me. God's people, can you feel me? In your Jeeps. Bounce this while you're riding down the street. One time for you, all right. Turn this up so the enemy can hear you. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. I praise.
He said, you know my name. As soon as he did that, I was like, I love it. You know my name. He said it again. He said, you know my name. Yeah. You know my name. He said, and oh, how you walk with me. Woo! And oh, how you talk with me. I hear you say, oh, how you tell me. And oh, how you tell me that I am your own. Let's say it real loud together. You know my name. You know my name. Yeah. Say you know my name. And you call me friend. Yeah. Say you know my name. Above and not beneath. Yeah, Lord. Say you know my name. Oh yeah. Oh, how you walk with me. And oh, how you walk with me. Has he been walking with you? And oh, how you talk with me. Oh, how you talk with me. Oh, how you tell me. And oh, how you tell me that I am your own. That I am your own. Say that one more time. Oh, how you walk with me. And oh, how you walk with me. I love this relationship. Oh, how you talk with me. Hey. Oh, how you tell me. Oh, how you tell me that I am your own. That I am your own. Now let's just take the next 30 seconds
hands and somebody just say something to him. Come on, raise up your voices and tell him how awesome he is. God, you're faithful. You're the lover of my soul, the keeper of my life. God, I adore you. God, we honor you tonight. Somebody just worship him. You're faithful, God. You're my peace. You're my joy. You're my life. You're my keeper. God, my strength. God, my father. God, you're my help. God, you're my comfort. God, you're my joy and my deliverance. Somebody just worship the Father tonight. need you. I wish you would raise up and worship to our God who has already won the victory. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
1, 2, 1, 2. Tina, get off my stuff. I'm not playing, man. All right. Wait, come on. You want to take this one? All right.
I get joy, thinking about what he's done for me. I get joy, thinking about what he's done for me. It's in my hands, feet, talking about what he's done for me. I get joy, just thinking about what he's done for me.
Oh, how I wonder when my soul looks back, how I ever made it through my sinful, wicked past. I did everything that I thought I wanted till it brought me down. Then God reached out to me, so I'm here to tell you now. I get joy, yeah. What he's done for me, said I'm thinking about it. In my hands and my feet, y'all. Just thinking about what he's done from the bottom of the mountain. I've had my share of pain. I've been through so many struggles. Thought I'd never breathe again. So I prayed that God would help me. I couldn't handle it no more. Then He lifted every burden, and that's why I get joy, yeah. Thinking about it. Oh yeah, joy, oh my. Tell you that I get joy. Talking about it. Oh, just thinking about it. Thinking about it. Oh, I get thinking about it. Thinking about what he's done, y'all. Talking about it. Yeah. Thinking about it. Oh, I'm not what I wanna be, but I'm not what I used to be. And I get joy when I think about it. I get joy when I think about it. What he's done for me. Thinking about it. Oh, I get joy, yeah. Thinking about it. Ooh, yeah. In my hands and my feet, yeah. Oh, what he's done for me. Oh, what he's done for me. You don't know like I know what he's done for me, yeah. You don't know like I know what he's done for me, yeah. Oh, I get talking about it. What he's done for me. I get joy, yeah. When I think about it, when I think about it.
I'm Paul George of the Indiana Pacers. When I was 6, my days were spent playing basketball. When I was 6, my dream was to make it to the NBA. When I was 6, my mom had a stroke. So I want you to learn to spot a stroke fast. F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. I'm Paul George. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought
Praise
to
the
you by
Lord,
the American
everybody.
Stroke
This is Deacon William
Association and
Hawks,
the Ad
also known
Council.
as El Presidente, here at Gospel 88.7 FM and 100.3 FM Atlantic City, where we have gospel. And yes, we're still spreading the gospel one song at a time. We want to thank God for all of our listeners who continue to pray for us and support us. Oftentimes, I'm walking down the street and someone asks, Deacon Hawks, El Presidente, I want to help. I want to get involved. I want to do my part. And they say, how can I do that? And I say, you know something? You can log onto our website and participate in our 8 for 88.7. That's right, 8 for 88.7. That's where we ask you to get involved, and you can support us by just donating $8 a month. How do you do that? You just go to our website, www.wehavegospel.com, press the donate button, and just simply support us with $8 a month. It's that simple. Once again, just go to www.wehavegospel.com, click the donate button, and follow the instruction. There you go. It's as simple as that. And once again, we thank you from all of us here at Gospel 88.7 FM and 100.3 FM, where we have gospel and where we're spreading the gospel one song at a time. God bless you.
Reliance Medical Group is pleased to announce cosmetic and reconstructive plastic surgery for women of all colors. Having specialized in women's health care for the past 35 years, Reliance now offers cosmetic and reconstructive procedures, including fat transfers, body contouring, earlobe reconstruction, breast reductions, breast reconstructions, lipo, Botox, and fillers. With a bariatric physician now on staff, Reliance now offers life-changing bariatric weight loss surgery. To find out more about Reliance Medical Group's specialty women's healthcare services, you can log on to RelianceMedicalGroup.net, download the Reliance app, or call 1-855-RELIANCE. That's 1-855-RELIANCE.
This song is for those that know without a doubt in their mind, I made it out all right. I made it out all right. I made it out all right. I made it out. I made it out all right. Thank you. You didn't leave me no forsake you. Thank you. You didn't let my enemies take me. I'm still. Yo, Charlie. Oh, help me. I made it all right. Made it out all right. Came out of my tragedy, and I win. I made it out all right, y'all. Thank you. Thank you. You didn't leave me. Thank you. You would have had you around me. You don't let the kids come up. I'm still in the fight. Take it up. I made it all right. I made it all right. Somebody's happy because God did it. God did it. He did it for me. I made it all right. Thank you. Because, Lord, I just want to thank you. You didn't let my enemies take me. I'm Listen here. I made it. I made it all right. I made it. Wow. I made it all right. I had some pain, Stanley Brown, and some misfortune. God showed up and gave me my portion. Yeah. Say I made it all right. I made it all right. Say I made it all right. The God that brought me
sing. How many of you know he's great and he's greatly to be praised? Great and mighty. Let all God's people sing how mighty. Yes, you are. All generations will cry. Yes, Lord. Great and mighty is our God. Great and mighty is our God. Our God. Great and mighty is our God. Great and mighty is our God. Who knows that we serve the mighty God, the only true living King? Great and mighty is our God. Great and mighty is our God. Now all over this room, lift your hands and sing, let all God's people sing. How mighty is our God. Yes, Lord. Each generation will cry. Thank you, Jesus. Let all God's people sing. Yes, Lord. And each generation will cry out mighty. So come on, right where you are today, God. We lift our hands and we sing yes. Mighty is our God. Mighty is our God. And we cry yes. Mighty is our God. Mighty is our God. Come on, we cry. Who alone is like you, Jesus? Come on, sing it in this room, too. Say we cry. Yes, Lord. Mighty is our God. We cry. Yes to your will, Jesus. Yes is our answer every day. Mighty is. And we cry. Yes. And the angels are singing in heaven. We'll decree it on the earth that you are great and mighty tonight. You are great, Jesus. Is our Savior. Great and mighty is our Savior. Great and mighty, hallelujah, is our Savior. Great and mighty is our Savior. Mighty is our God. You're mighty. You're mighty. We sing yes. You're mighty. Mighty is our God. Hallelujah. Who is this King of glory? Come on. He is the Lord of hosts. He is our master. Come on. He is our Savior. Come on. He is our Redeemer. Come on. He is our healer. Come on. He is our provider. Come on. All we stand in need of. He is great and mighty. Yes.
And God, the reason why we're standing in your presence, because we ready our spirits, we unify our hearts. Our hearts are knitted to worship you, God. It is our will to bless you. It is our will to glorify you. No matter what our circumstances are, you are greater, you are higher, and we decree the saints lift their hands together, and we decree this great God that we serve. Lift your hands and sing, mighty. Sing it. And mighty. Sing yes. Mighty is our God. Our God. Yes, Lord. We bless your name. We bless you and we worship you. We glorify you and adore you. Your King, King, Lord, our God, our Messiah, Master, the maker of heaven and earth. Come on, we bless your name tonight. Come on, lift your hands, believer. Lift your hands and worship him in this room. Come on, lift your hands and bless him in this room tonight. We bless you, Jesus. Come on, we glorify you. Hallelujah, Jesus. We reverence you, Jesus. We bless your name, Jesus. Hallelujah, Lord Jesus. Bless that glorious name of Jesus. We reverence you, Holy Savior. Thank you. You are tonight, Lord. All the praise is yours, Jesus. You're mighty, Jesus. You're glorified, Jesus. Hallelujah, Jesus. We bless your name, Jesus. We honor you, Lord Jesus. Hallelujah, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. You're a mighty God. You are a mighty God. You are a mighty God, Jesus. You're an awesome God, Jesus. And we reverence your name, Lord. We worship your name, Lord God. You're strong and mighty, Lord. You will fight for your people, Lord. Oh, we love you so much with everything within us. Great and mighty is our God. Great and mighty is our God.
Hawks Janitorial Contractors Corp. was established in 1987 by husband and wife team William and Elaine Hawks. Our motto is a great job at a fair price. The Hawks team is skillful, customer-focused, delivering quality janitorial services that meet and exceed our clients' specific needs. Hawks Janitorial Contractors Corp., proud sponsors of Gospel 88.7 FM. For more information, 609-484-0452.
The weather outside is frightful.
But the gospel is so delightful. Yes.
Check out our new website at www.wehavegospel.com.
My prayer today, yeah. Restore me. Restore to me the joy. Restore to me the joy. Restoration has finally come. Been restored back to my place in God. Restoration has finally come. Been restored back to my place in God. What would I know about being restored if I never lost my place? And What would I know about his mercy if I hadn't gotten out of grace? But restoration has finally come. Been restored back to my place in God. Oh, restoration finally come. Been restored back to my place in God. It reminds me of prodigal son. After his riotous living, all the evil he had done. Yet when he returned, his father received him home, gave him a ring of gold, put him on the road, killed the fatted calf, gave him something he never ever had. Restoration has finally come. I've been restored back to my place. I'm gonna say it one more time. I say restoration has finally come. Been restored, my brother. Restored back to my place in God. Oh, what would I know about being restored if I never lost my place? What would I know about his mercy if I hadn't gotten out of grace? It sort of reminds me of the prodigal son. After his riotous living, all the evil he had done. Yet when he returned, his father received him home, gave him a ring of gold, put him on the robe, killed the fatted calf, gave him something he never ever had. Restoration has finally come. I have been restored back to my place in God. Yeah, restoration has finally come. I have been restored back to my place in God. Oh, oh, oh. Restore the joy of my salvation. Give me back my consecration. Restore the life that I once knew. I'm giving my life back to you, yes. I'm giving my life back to you. And we just like to say, restore me. Yeah. Restore the joy. Restore me. Restore to me the joy, yes. Restore the joy. I wanna come back home, yes. Restore me. Won't you bring me back, Lord? Restore the joy. I need to be restored, Lord. Restore to me the joy. Restore the joy. I'm restored. I'm glad about it. I said I'm restored. I'm glad about it. I've been renewed. I'm glad about it. I've been renewed. I'm glad about it. 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 I'm
Since Jesus came into my life, he brought out the best in me. Since Jesus came to my life, he set my soul free. Saved my soul, and he made me whole, and he gave me victory. Since Jesus came, yes he did, to my life. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joe LeGarde. Since Jesus came into my life, he gave me a brand new song. Since Jesus came my soul. And he made me whole. I know he did. Gave me the victory. He gave it to me too. Yeah, yeah. Since he came in. Since he came in. Since he came in. Yes, he did. My life. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Since Jesus came in, I know he did to my life. Oh, change my way of walking. That changed my way of talking. Change my way of giving. Oh, change my way of living. Yes, he did. I've been changed. Yes, I've been changed. Jesus changed me. Places that I used to go, I don't go there no more. Since he changed me, I can love everybody. I've been changed. So I know what you're singing about. Lord, you changed me a long time ago. And I know you can change anyone. Since he changed me. Oh, yeah. You gotta do is go to I can love everybody. Yeah. So I know it's been hard sometimes, man. But since God changed you, everything gonna be all right. Yeah. I want you to change me. Change my mind. He can do it anyway. I'm thinking of better. Change me, change me. Change my heart, Lord. You can do it anyway. I want to love everybody. Change my life. Yes, change me, Jesus. Those old places I used to hang out, I just don't go there no more. I don't have a mind to go where I used to go. Change my mind, Lord. The way I'm going places. I know. Sister Lord changed me. He changed. I know what you're saying, Joe. I know what you're talking about. Me. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Oh, I'm glad he changed me. Oh, I'm glad he changed me too. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I thank you, Jesus. Thank you for changing me. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm not the same no more. No. I'm not like I used to be. I gotta lift my hand. You changed me. You changed me. Oh, yeah. You changed me. You changed me. Thank you, Jesus. Yeah, you did.
Would you like to hear your company or church announcements or church broadcast on the airwaves of WHA? You can call our business office at 609-641-8870 for further details.
I find space for what I treasure, and I make time for what I want. I choose
Gospel 88.7 WEHA. It's more than music. It's ministry.
WEHA, Port Republic, Atlantic City. And now on FM Translator 100.3 W262CF, Atlantic
Hawks,
City.
a name that has been trusted for almost 30 years in the janitorial services industry, is proud to present Hawks Professional Moving Services. Fully insured, local and long distance, packing services, commercial and residential, no job too small or too large, friendly and reliable services. For more information or a free estimate, 609-484-0452. Hawks Professional Moving Services, where we treat your belongings like our own.
You are listening to Christ-centered, community-focused, listener-supported gospel. 88.7 and 100.3 FM, Atlantic City WEHA. Don't forget to follow us on social media by searching We Have Gospel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Find out more at www.wehavegospel.com.
Oh, come on, put those hands together if you want to go higher. Woo! My. Lord have mercy. I want to go higher. Higher in the Lord. I want to go higher. Higher in the Lord. I'm pressing toward the upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day. Still praying as I'm heaven bound. Plant my feet on high ground. Higher in the Lord. Want to go higher. Higher in the Lord. I want to go higher. Higher in the Lord. My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears display. So some would rather these abound, but my aim is high ground. Oh, I want to go higher. Yes, sir. I want to go higher. Oh, I'm rising toward the upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day. Still praying as I'm heaven bound. Plant my feet on higher ground. And let me stand. My faith on table land. Oh, no higher plane than I have found. Plant my feet on higher ground.
Look where he brought me from. Oh, look where he brought me from. Oh, he brought me out of darkness into the marvelous light. Look where he brought me from. Oh, look where he brought me from. Oh, look where he brought me from. Oh, he brought me out of darkness into the marvelous light. Look where he brought me from. You know he into the marvelous light. Look where he brought me from. Shoulder. My God. Why don't you tell him, Lord, I just want to thank you for where you brought me from. Thank you for where you brought me to. And by faith, thank you for where you're leading me.
This is called I Belong to You. Yeah. Soul. Why don't you take me, make me what you want me to be? Everything I am, and everything I'm not, I'm yours all alone, mind, body, and soul. Why don't you take me? Wait a minute. Wait. You see, you saved my soul from a burning hell. Oh, yes, you did. And now, right now, I'm so glad I could tell. Yes, I do. I really do. Yeah. Sure enough, I do. Yeah. Yours all alone. Hey, band, break me down. Break me down. See you the spirit and lets me sleep at night. Then I wake up early in the morning, knowing everything's gonna be all right. Oh, Yes, I do. I do. I do, yeah. Wait a minute. Yours all. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I came to Jesus. Just as I was. I was weary. I was wounded. I was so sad, so sad. But I found in him sweet old resting place. Anybody else found that place? From that day to this one, the Lord has made me glad. Y'all help me sing right here.
What's the difference between going to AtlantiCare's Comprehensive Stroke Center and going anywhere else? It's the difference between watching your grandkid ride a bike and teaching him how to ride. It's the difference between seeing your daughter get married and walking her down the aisle. It's the difference between losing what you love and living for it. When it comes to treating stroke, the difference between going anywhere else and going to AtlantiCare is everything. We're the only healthcare program with a neurocritical care team available 24/7. We have a diagnostic neuroimaging lab, and our neurosurgeons are always ready to operate if needed. And we meet the toughest standards to be a designated comprehensive stroke center. Why are we offering world-class stroke care right here?
Mrs. Thomas, your husband is in the right hands.
Because the difference is worth it. To see the difference, visit atlanticare.org/stroke
The second
care.
best thing about driving home is listening to WEHA. The best thing is getting there. And that's why I'm glad when I finally get home, I can listen to WEHA on my computer. It's easy. All you have to do is go to wehavegospel.com. Not only can I hear the station, I can also see what's playing at the time, as well as what has already played before. You know, sometimes I'll hear a song on the radio and I want to know the name of the song and where I can get it from, you know. And when I need to go to another website, I can always use the pop-out player to keep WEHA playing in the background while I browse the web. They make it so easy for me at wehavegospel.com. You got to check it out.
Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, a constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches over me. His eye
And I know He watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. He watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches. I know He watches. I know He watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. He watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. He watches me. He watches me. I know He watches me.
We got a brand new one I'm gonna share with you tonight. Are you ready? Goes like this. You make the blind man see, make the lame man walk again. You cause the dead to rise, and that's why we dance in liberty, 'cause you're doing it all again. Yeah, yeah, 'cause you're doing it all again. Oh, say, you made the blind man see, made the lame man walk again. You called the dead to rise, and that's why we dance in liberty. Come on, shout it, you're doing it again. You're the same God, yeah. You're still healing. He's the same God. Come on, say still create. Still create. He's the same God, same God, same God. Chain breaking, yeah. He's doing it all again. Are you ready? Say it. 'Cause you're doing it all again.
Jesus. There's just something about that name. Those of you that know it, you know what I'm talking about. I call him Master, Savior, Jesus. It's like the fragrance after the rain. His name is Jesus. Yes, yes, yes. His name is Jesus. Jesus. Let all heaven and earth proclaim that kings and kingdoms, they shall all pass away. Oh, but there's something, oh, but there's something, there's something, I know that there's something, I can't explain it, but there's something, yeah, there's something about it, when I call him in the midnight hour, there's something about it. Something about that name, yeah. Come on, give that name praise. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Whew, I feel the anointing in this place.
Tune into In the Community with Thelma Witherspoon, Saturdays 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Gospel 88.7 FM.
When Dad needed help getting around, I became his driver. Any daughter would do the same. But soon enough, he needed help doing more things, and it was up to me to be his personal shopper and financial manager, too. And before I knew it, Dad moved in with me, so I became his cook, his personal assistant, his physical therapist, and even his nurse. When I started taking care of Dad, I didn't realize all the roles I'd have to play. But no matter what, I know I'm still his daughter.
We understand the many roles you play, and to help, we created an online caregiving resource center. At aarp.org/caregiving, you can find resources and connect with the caregiving community. Together, we can better care for ourselves and the ones we love. Visit aarp.org/caregiving to learn more. A public service announcement.
Hello,
brought to you by
WEHA
AARP
listeners. This
and
is
the
Lisa
Ad
Diane
Council.
Hall, General Sales Manager here at WEHA 88.7 and 100.3 FM, where we have gospel and we have talk. We'd like to thank you for listening and sincerely appreciate your continued support over the last 10 years. Thanks to all of you, WEHA is now a 2-time Stellar Award-winning gospel radio station with a recording studio right here in your local community. As the newly appointed General Sales Manager, it is my goal to share my 20 years of experience in broadcasting and marketing with your church, business, or organization. I am pleased to announce WEHA's new community branding partnerships, where you have the opportunity to be heard on all of WEHA's platforms, including 2 FM bands, WEHA WeHaveGospel.com, and all of WEHA's social media pages, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. WEHA is currently seeking new Sunday morning programming and new talk shows. For more information or or to arrange a WEHA studio tour, you can reach me, Lisa Diane Hall, at WEHA Studios at 609-641-8870. That's 609-641-8870. WEHA is Christ-centered, community-focused, and listener-supported.
Hello, I'm George C.
Hi, I'm Professor J.
You know why I like listening to gospel on the radio? It's easy. You turn it on, turn up the volume, and you have gospel.
Listening in the car is cool, I guess, but I'm more into listening from my computer. I just type in the website, and I have gospel.
So whether you listen to gospel on the radio, on 88.7 FM, WEHA,
or on your computer on www.wehavegospel.com,
we have gospel.
So check out our new website, wehavegospel.com.
You don't know what I've been through. Let me share my story with you. All the things that he brought me through. My stormy days and my rainy days. You don't know all the tears I've cried, the things I've kept bottled up inside, trying my best to be strong, waiting on God and holding on. You don't know what I had to endure, and you wonder why I'm so sure. 'Cause my Father never lets me down. He's always around, even when I can't see. Oh, thank you, Jesus. You don't know how many times I prayed over and over, but my situation didn't change, never changed. But just when I felt like it was the end, you came and you did it again. You did it again. You did it again. And you did it again. I know you got a story too. How God stepped in and made a way for you. He wiped every one of your tears, yeah. And he's the reason you're still here. Don't know. You don't know. You don't know. You just don't know. You don't know. You don't know. Tell somebody you just don't know. Hey. Don't know. Don't know. Don't know. Don't know. Just don't know. Just don't know. You don't know. Don't know. Don't know. Oh Lord. Don't know. Let me tell you my testimony.